Hello friends, Reckless here. Today we're going to be doing a Runeterra meta report, the first one for 2023, and we haven't done one in a while, but we had a hot patch, and that has shaken up the meta. If you want to see what the hot patch was, I did a quick VOD. Card will be above my head, I'm pretty sure. So just getting into it, we're going to go over the top decks in the metagame and take a quick skim of their matchups and what the decks look like. We are using MasteringRuneterra.com because lore meta seems to have gone deadage, which is very sad. The first deck that seems to have the highest win rate in the meta in the last 3 days is Jinx Lulu. This deck is obviously getting a huge boost because of the Jinx buff that happened a couple moons back where she gets a super mega death rocket on level, and this is just the traditional kind of swarm deck where you play Boom Baboon, Flame Chompers, flood your board, use Lulu to pump your challenger units, but also the Squeaker buff gives you access to some really high statted, very efficient Mecha Yordles. And also, Sneezy Biggledust is one of the big finishers. It's kind of like our new Yordle in Arms, since a good number of the units we're making are created. The second deck is Trundle Tryndamere SI. It seems to be good against Aatrox and Draven Jinx. It seems to be bad against Jinx Lulu and Red Gwen. I think this matchup's kind of cope, because if we just open the view deck, we will notice this deck is playing no Raging Ravine, or Yawning Ravine, the 4 mana landmark that does 2 damage to everything, and does 2 damage to everything and heals you. That's the card I'm talking about. It only has 3 avalanches. This isn't really teched out to beat aggro decks, so I think this is kind of drunk on its own sauce a little, but hey. Yeah. So I actually called out both these decks to be the big winners in my little review patch, so kind of feels good to see him do well. Third up in play rate is Lurk, Pike Rek'Sai, 5.71, 50% win rate, so not the best. It is good against Field Rush with a 57% win rate, good against Sundisk with a 56, bad against Jinx Lulu, bad against Gwen, so kind of similar matchup spread, despite not being a control deck, against the very top decks as FTR. And this is pretty much just the Lurk you know and love or hate. Personally, I think Lurk's actually, I think it's a bit of an underrated deck. People oversimplify it because they just lose a few too many games to like the triple one drop start where they hit like constant rec size. But there's a lot of value to be had in just like calling the pack properly to get your pikes going. It's really tricky, and it can come back from some pretty crazy situations. I haven't played it in a long time since I think the before the pike nerfs, so don't really have a whole lot to say here. Blood in the Water's cool card though. Third up, we have Red Gwen. It's never going away. It only had 1 card nerfed, and that is Fallen Reckoner. It seems the numbers haven't changed yet. But yeah, this is just, kind of the same old deck we've seen for months. Very efficient curve, has a lot of cool combos in it, has 2 Harrowings, and kind of like a varied splattering of tech cards depending on what you're trying to target. It's good against FTR and Lurk, bad against Jinx Lulu, and bad against Ezreal, Seraphine, Victor, Bar. Fifth up, we have Hecarim Zed, good against FTR, Azir, bad against Lurk, bad against Red Gwen, just kind of the classic. Like, this is a pretty good control killer because like ephemerals are kind of wacky that way, but also you're gonna be a little slow against aggro, like just like a turn slower. And yeah, it has Darkened Fan, Opulent Foyer, 3 Black Flames. This card's so fun. I've been toying around with it with Zed Gwen, and I think it's actually a little better there personally, just because you can play way more free attack effects because you get the Blade Dancers. And yeah, so this deck's just trying to spam the board with ephemerals, and Hecarim got a big buff, right? So when he's level 2, all your ephemerals get +3/+0 permanently. Your Nexus gets that ability, so it's just gonna be like massive damage coming in. Sixth up, we have Sundisk Azir Zareth. Seems to be good against Bar, the Aatrox decks, Darkness. Traditionally, Sundisk has been very good against the slower control decks. And I believe it has a good match. Oh no, it's actually down against FTR. I assume that's just because FTR can turn the corner just a bit faster. We did see the FTR lists have some ramps, so maybe that's what's at play here. And bet against Jinx Lulu. And the big update to this deck with recent cards is Rock Bear Shepherd. When you summon an ally, advance your highest landmark countdown by 1, and it makes a hibernating rock bear, which is the landmark that turns into a 5/5. So this unit will ramp your buried Sundisk so you can go back to turn 7 Sundisk levels. And yeah, so this might be a very interesting deck to see play in best of 3 lineups, especially if you're trying to target control decks, like hard target them. But I don't think we're going to see it in just kind of like regular meat and potatoes, generic good stuff lineups, just because its matchups are like really bad, right? Like 31% against Jinx Lulu. Especially if you think triple aggro lineups might be viable, just because we have Jinx Lulu, Red Gwen, and they just need to find the third aggro deck with a similar matchup spread, which you can also find on Mastering Runeterra in their matchup table section. Links obviously will be in the description. And yeah. 7th up, we have Aatrox Quinn Vayne. It's definitely taken a huge hit in win rate. As we can see, it's plummeted down to 47.59. This used to be, I think this was like at 55, 57 at like, I don't know, like 4 days ago. So the nerfs have really affected it, which I am super happy to see. I've been really sick of watching this deck on stream. Yeah, it's still favored against Bar. I guess it's like basically a coin flip with Zed Heck. It's good against Shani. And yeah, it's kind of good against some of the memes I like. Rise isn't really a deck, but it's got like a lot of the big decks in the metagame currently are just not necessarily that great. And that's kind of because I think Aatrox Quinn Vayne essentially forced everyone to figure out the best decks to beat it well before the nerfs came. So once the nerfs did come, they all just like pounced on it, right? At 8th, we have Draven Jinx, 55% win rate and a 3.36% win rate, so definitely significantly lower than the win rate of Jinx Lulu. Something to keep in mind there. Let's just go back to it real quick. And is there anything particularly interesting here? Not really. This is honestly, outside of Crimson Pigeon, the discard aggro deck of like 1999, I personally prefer Jinx Lulu. I really wouldn't put too much stock into this, honestly. It's good matchups, so just decks with bad aggro matchups, it seems. It is favored against Red Gwen, though. That's kind of spicy. But it apparently also loses to FTR, which isn't really a good sign because Jinx Lulu was beating FTR, which I don't think is correct. But this, because in my opinion, I think the FTR decks aren't properly being built to beat up on Jinx, because I think she's probably like one of the pillars of the metagame now. And if you're already losing to the unmodified Feel the Rush deck, geez, when they actually start playing Blight of Ravine, things are going to get real bad for you. In 9th, we have the Seraphine Ezreal Bar deck with Bandle City. I don't have too much experience with this deck personally, but they play a lot of one-ofs. I can't remember why. I think it's because of Catastrophe, but I don't even see it here. So thankfully this archetype took a huge nerf in win rate due to the bar nerf. If I could just get out of here and find myself again. Yeah, it's plummeted down to a 45% win rate. This again was like, I believe in like 55, 54, somewhere in that range, very low play rate. It's losing to FTR, it's losing to Jinx Lulu, but it's kind of eating up some of the other aggro decks, some of the other Pharaoh decks, just because it's loaded with lots of cheap interaction and very cheap card advantage, so it'll always kind of be able to keep pace, right? Like this Slurk matchup is not surprising. And the last deck I'm going to cover is Rumble Vayne. This deck was a bit of a memer that had a positive Aatrox matchup, because essentially you just go all in on Rumble or some other unit, suit it up, and just beat them down before they get to do World Ender. And now we see its win rate without its main prey. I believe it's down. I think this deck was close to 50 before. So with Aatrox waning in play rate, this deck is also waning. As we can see here, good Sundisk matchup, Aatrox, Red Gwen. I guess it's pretty much coin flippy, because like 2% each way can that could just be like sample size issue, especially with like such low numbers. But it is a little soft to FTR. Jinx Lulu's just faster. Even though this deck goes all in, it goes in taller and it gets you with multiple attacks, whereas this can just pump out so much raw damage. I am surprised it's unfavored to Lurk, but I guess it's a similar thing where they just flood the board with a lot of high-powered units. You have no interaction and you eventually just get outraced, despite having, you know, a big 8-powered unit coming in. So yeah, that is the meta report. If you enjoyed it, please consider mystic shotting that like button. Yours costs 0 and it helps push this content to other people. And if you want more Runeterra goodness, I do a bit of ranked. I also do some Path of Champions stuff. Click that subscribe button and I'll see you next time.